Do you feel it? This strange heaviness in the air, this silence that is not really silence, but the quiet suffocation of minds slowly shutting down. We live in a world where information is everywhere, yet wisdom is disappearing, where opinions scream louder than truth, and the ability to think critically, once the very shield that protected humanity from manipulation, has become a rare treasure, almost extinct. Ask yourself, when was the last time you stopped and questioned something? Truly questioned it. Not because someone told you to, not because you saw it trending, but because your soul whispered that something was wrong. Most people don't do it anymore. They scroll, they consume, they repeat. They are chained, but they call it freedom. And here is the brutal truth. We are witnessing the end of critical thinking, and in its place rises the monster of collective stupidity, a beast that feeds on conformity, on blind agreement, on the comfort of never thinking for yourself. And while this beast grows, our individuality dies a little more each day. It is terrifying, isn't it? To realize that the majority prefers to follow the crowd rather than face the loneliness of independent thought. That people would rather shout the slogans of the masses than whisper their own truth. This is how stupidity wins, not with brilliance, not with strength, but with numbers, with noise, with the seductive promise of belonging. Look around. You will see it in politics, in media, in society. Minds no longer sharpen themselves against ideas. They dull themselves with distraction. They poison themselves with easy narratives. They anesthetize themselves with entertainment. And little by little, the ability to think critically slips away, like sand through fingers. And here you are listening to these words, feeling the sting in your chest because deep down you know it's true. You've seen it in your family, in your friends, even in yourself. That slow surrender, that giving up of the responsibility to think. And maybe you're tired of it, tired of the shallowness, tired of the noise, tired of the blindness. But hear me now. You are not crazy for feeling this way. You are awake in a world that sleeps. You are standing in a storm of conformity and daring to ask, what happened to us? And this question is the beginning of your rebellion. So stay with me, because this is not just about the world out there. This is about you, your life, your freedom. And what I'm about to tell you might shake you, but it will also awaken something you thought you had lost. The tragedy of our time is not just ignorance. Ignorance has always existed. The tragedy is that we now celebrate it. We glorify it. We put it on pedestals and call it authenticity. We confuse loudness with truth and arrogance with knowledge. And slowly, we forget that wisdom begins in silence, in humility, in the sacred act of questioning. Think about it. How many times have you seen people defend ideas they barely understand with a passion stronger than reason? How many times have you watched entire groups repeat the same words, like echoes bouncing off empty walls? This is not intelligence. This is programming. And the more people trade thinking for belonging, the more collective stupidity thrives. Critical thinking requires courage. Courage to be unpopular, courage to be mocked, courage to stand alone if necessary. That courage is disappearing. People don't want the weight of thinking anymore. They want the comfort of agreement. They want to feel safe in numbers, even if those numbers march them straight into destruction. And here is the cruel irony. The more voices shout in unison, the less truth is spoken. Because truth does not scream, it whispers. It lives in the quiet space between questions. It requires attention, effort, sacrifice. And most people today, they don't have the patience for it. They would rather consume lies wrapped in shiny packaging than wrestle with truths that demand responsibility. But you, listening to this right now, you feel the hunger, don't you? The hunger for something real. The hunger to cut through the fog and see clearly. The hunger to stop living like a sleepwalker in a world that worships illusions. That hunger is not weakness. It is proof that your mind is still alive, that your soul still resists the hypnosis of the crowd. Do not underestimate what that means, because the world does not change through the many. It changes through the few who dare to think differently. History was never moved by the comfortable majority. It was moved by those who questioned when everyone else bowed, by those who refused to drown in stupidity, even when it cost them everything. And yes, it will cost you. It will cost you friends who no longer understand you. It will cost you the ease of belonging to the herd. It may even cost you peace of mind because awareness is heavy. But what is the alternative? To trade truth for comfort, to trade freedom for illusion, to trade your very mind for the approval of strangers? No, deep down that you cannot. Because the moment you surrender your ability to think, you surrender your humanity itself. You become a shell, a reflection, a copy. And maybe that is the greatest tragedy of all. Not the death of thought, but the death of the self. So listen carefully. If you still feel the weight of these words, if you still feel your chest burn with recognition, then you are not lost. You are not part of the collapse. You are still alive in a world that is slowly dying. And this, my friend, is your chance to rise above the noise. What no one wants to admit is that collective stupidity is not an accident. It is engineered, designed, shaped by systems that thrive on a population too distracted to question, too divided to unite, too entertained to resist. Do you think it's coincidence that everywhere you look there is noise, screens, endless scrolls? No. It is the perfect cage. A cage without walls, where the prisoners believe they are free. And the cruelest part? Most people love their cage. They decorate it, defend it, even fight for it. They confuse convenience with freedom. They call distractions connection, and addictions happiness. And little by little, the light of independent thought fades until only shadows remain. But yes, you who are still here, you feel the danger. You see it. You know that when critical thinking dies, manipulation reigns. A society that cannot question is a society that can be controlled. And make no mistake, control is exactly what grows in the silence of unthinking minds. Have you noticed how easy it is to make people believe anything as long as it is repeated enough times? Lies don't need to be clever, they only need to be loud. And when the crowd chants them, even the wisest begin to doubt themselves. This is how truth is buried, not with fire, not with chains, but with noise. And so we arrive at the edge of collapse. A generation that drowns in information but starves for wisdom. A society that praises opinions but punishes questions. A culture where stupidity is not only tolerated, it is weaponized. And in this storm, critical thinkers are treated not as guides, but as threats. But here is where your choice begins. You can surrender to the current, let it drag you into the comfortable abyss of the majority. Or you can fight. You can choose to sharpen your mind like a sword, to question, to doubt, to challenge even yourself. You can stand against the tide. And yes, it will be exhausting. Yes, it will be lonely. But what is the value of a life lived in blindness? Remember this. History does not remember those who conformed. It remembers those who resisted, those who saw further, even when the crowd called them fools, those who spoke truth, even when it cost them everything. And the world needs those people now more than ever. Because stupidity may rise, but it is never invincible. You are proof of that. Every question you dare to ask, every illusion you refuse to swallow, every time you pause instead of react, you weaken the beast of collective stupidity. You reclaim your humanity. You carve a space for truth to survive. And maybe that is the most important fight of our time, not against armies, not against governments, not even against technology, but against the slow, seductive death of our own ability to think. If we lose that, we lose everything. So don't let it die in you. Don't let the fire go out. Because your mind, your critical thought, is not just yours. It is a light. And in a world drowning in shadows, that light might be the only thing keeping the darkness from winning. And now, here we stand, at the breaking point of an era. The death of critical thinking is not just an idea. It is visible, it is real, it is unfolding in front of us. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear it. The silence of minds that no longer question, the applause of crowds cheering for their own blindness, the echo of truth being buried under layers of noise. But do not let despair take you. Because despair is the weapon of the system. It paralyzes, it numbs, it makes you believe there is no point in fighting. And that is the greatest lie of all. Because the truth is this: one awake mind is more powerful than 1,000 asleep. One soul that refuses to bow to stupidity becomes a spark, and sparks create fire. Yes, collective stupidity is rising, but it does not need to own you. It does not need to define your children, your future, your destiny, because every time you choose to think instead of repeat, to question instead of obey, to seek truth instead of comfort, you break the chain. You tear down the invisible walls. You reclaim your humanity. And I ask you now, will you dare? Will you dare to be the one who sees when others close their eyes? Will you dare to be the voice of reason when the world screams nonsense? Will you dare to carry the burden of thought even when it feels unbearable, because you know that without it, life itself becomes empty? You must, because the alternative is far worse. The alternative is a world where stupidity rules unchecked, where manipulation writes history, where truth is erased, and where your very soul becomes just another echo in the crowd. That is not life. That is slavery, dressed as freedom. So, rise above the noise, rise above the comfort, rise above the easy lies that feed the masses. And if you feel fear, let it remind you that you are alive. If you feel anger, let it drive you to clarity. If you feel loneliness, let it prove that you are standing where few dare to stand, on the edge of truth. And remember this, critical thinking is not just about intelligence, it is about courage. It is about the courage to face reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. It is about the courage to cut through illusions, to see yourself, to free yourself. And when you do, you become unstoppable. So let the world laugh, let the world mock, let the world drown in its own noise. You will stand, you will think, you will see. And in doing so, you will not only save yourself, you will become a light for others lost in the dark. Because the end of critical thinking is not inevitable. It ends only if we allow it to. And if you are still here, still listening, still breathing these words, then you are proof that the fire is not gone. It burns in you, and from you, it can spread. So guard it, protect it, live it. Because the future does not belong to the crowd. The future belongs to those who dare to think,